we had divorced because, honestly, we shouldn't have gotten married in the first place. We were kind of miserable together, or at least I was miserable. And he was angry all the time. And so I left him in October of 2017, and then divorce was finalized in January 2018, and then 3 days later, he shows up to my new house where I've only been living for about a month and a half, and to my knowledge, he didn't know where I lived. He didn't know like what I was doing. I could have been at my mom's house for all he knew. But I guess he followed me like back home, or had been watching me and found out that way. And so that Saturday morning, January 13th, I had just gotten off of work from my job, and I had been awake for like 24 hours at that point. And so I was exhausted. I didn't know what was going on. And so he came to my front door, and he was banging on it, of course, and he was yelling my name. And I was I was so tired. I didn't know what was going on. And he had never been violent with me, so of course I recognized his voice, but I didn't think he had a reason to hurt me. And so I opened the door, and that's when he just rushed in and started his attack, I guess. Do you want me to go into like the whole story I put on Facebook, or?
Do you feel comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, I guess so. He forces his way inside.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you're like half awake, not sure what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
and he's your ex-husband and hadn't been violent to you up until this point.
Mm-hmm.
So he rushes in, and then what happened?
He rushes in, and immediately his hands are around my throat. He's trying to cover my nose so that I can't breathe. And so we're struggling. I hit the stairs behind me. And then we get back up. His hands are back on me. I'm like clawing at his eyes. I break his glasses. And there's just a struggle into the kitchen. And so we're in the kitchen, and he like tries to talk to me for a second, but he doesn't really. It's almost like he tries to rape me, but it didn't work. That's the important part there. And so I'm like pleading with him, asking him to leave. And so he goes and sits down in this little director's chair I have sitting in my kitchen. And so I move away from him. I'm like back against my kitchen sink right now. And I ask him why he's here and he's doing this, and I've told him that if he just leaves right now, that I won't call the police, nothing else has to happen, like I won't say anything. I guess he didn't believe me because he didn't leave. But I really think I wouldn't have said anything if he had just left, for fear that he would come back, I guess. But then he stands up, and it's almost like he goes to hug me, like he puts his arms out. And so I flinch, and I put my arms out to like tell him to back away. And you could see that made him just get angry. And so he pulls out his knife from his right back pocket and it's a little half serrated 5-inch knife that flips. And so he just makes a move to stab me the first time, and he makes contact with my abdomen. And like I'm trying to like catch his wrist so that he won't or he can't jab at me anymore. And so he's much taller than me. He's like 6 foot, and I'm only 5'2". And so he like reaches around me and stabs down into my back and makes contact twice. And he just barely missed my spine. And so I managed to get a hold of his wrist. And so he tries to turn the knife on himself. He tries to stab himself, and he's yelling at me to kill him, to just let him die. And so that obviously didn't happen at that point, but he drops the knife, and so I take it with me. I run upstairs and lock myself in my bedroom and then in my bathroom and call 911, and they're there quickly. They're there within like 2 minutes. And so I guess the fire department breaks down the door because he had gone and locked it. And they found him like lying in a pool of his own blood, near death, I think. I didn't get confirmation on that. But when they came upstairs to get me and they had walked me down, they had already taken him out on the ambulance. It looked like he had died to me. There was so much blood. And so I asked him if he was okay, and they told me they were taking him to the hospital. They told me he was going to Augusta University, and so they asked me where I wanted to go. And then everything just happened from there.
What was going through your head when, I mean, that's not something anyone is ever prepared for. Was anything going through your head? Was it just like I have to stay alive? Was it just the basic necessities? What was going through your head at that moment?
Between the fight or flight action, I had the flight action. Like any little bit of training that my brothers or anybody had told me to do while being attacked went right out of my mind. Really, all I could think about was I'm going to die. And that if I didn't get away, I was going to die. And so I was just focused on actually like getting upstairs and calling 911. So
court proceeding happens.
Mm-hmm.
He pleads under first offender status, aggravated assault.
So he pleads not guilty at his first hearing. And then it's not until like 6 to 9 months later, sometime in that time, that I get a call from the DA's office, and he's going to change his plea. And so at this point, everybody had told me, yeah, he's going to be like put away for life. There was no doubt in my mind that he was going to be put away because it was so obvious. Like when he came to my house, he hid his car in the next neighborhood over so I wouldn't see it. And he brought a knife with him. I never knew him to carry a knife. And so when I actually like went to court, it seemed like nobody was prepared to like hear my case or like defend me. I'm not sure the lawyer who had been assigned to mine had even read about what I had been through until that morning. And so, of course, he had two very well-paid lawyers, I'm sure. And so they made the case that it was his first offense, of course, that he was an upstanding citizen before that, and that because he had gone to college and because he had a good job, that he didn't deserve to have this affect him the rest of his life. And
How has it affected you?
That's what I wanted to say. I was like, it's going to affect me way more than him it ever will, because I'm going to have to live in fear every single day of my life and live with the anxiety and the panic attacks that comes with it. And it's affected like relationships in my family. Like me and my sister don't talk anymore because she was the one I was living with. And so at court, they, like I said, the person defending me was, or prosecuting him wasn't prepared. Like the judge asked if there were pictures of the knife and pictures of my wounds, and they didn't have any of that. And I know they had taken them because they had me like take off my shirt and took pictures of me. And so that was heartbreaking at that point. I was like, oh, well, I've lost this. And so he was sentenced to 3 years with time served. And so he had already been in jail almost a year at that point, so 2 years left. And then he has like probation for like 5 years or something like that when he gets out, but he's already been released, so I don't know how all of that works.
So total amount of time, the year during all the court proceedings, and then not even an additional year, so like total 2 years he spent in prison, less than that?
Yeah, he spent, because this January would have made 2 years total, so he spent less than 2 years in jail or prison. He was only in prison for a year maybe, and then in Columbia County Jail for 9 months at most.
So now that he's out, not sharing anything about their private identity, but you've had women contact you and say what?
I've had women contact me asking me if, like, they've screenshotted his Facebook and asked me if this is the guy. And a couple of the women have told me that they were talking to him on Tinder. And
And that's part of why you wanted to share your story, right?
Yeah, I don't want anybody else to get hurt, because who's to say he doesn't get angry and just snap on somebody? Like, obviously he's a strong guy. Like, it doesn't matter if there's a knife involved. He could hurt somebody in any other way. That was kind of my main fear, that either he would come back for me or he would do it to somebody else. Which I wouldn't be surprised if that ultimately happens. But
what do you think gives you the courage and the strength to do what you did on Facebook and then sit here today? I mean, the reason I ask that is so many women have come before you and have not your same story. No one has your same story, but I mean, I saw women in the comments, saying that they have similar stories or they've lived similar experiences, but they stay silent, and that's their decision. It's their, like he said when you walked in, that's their story. I'm not saying that that's wrong and what you're doing is right, but it takes a certain level of courage to do what you're doing. Where do you think that courage comes from?
Anger, maybe. I'm so angry that I know so many women who have either been like assaulted by a man or sexually assaulted, and nothing has ever happened or come of it. either because they didn't feel okay in saying anything or because they think nobody would protect them or whatever. But I'm angry about it. And I told my therapist when the court proceedings first happened that I was just going to blast him on Facebook so that people know what he did, where like future jobs know what he did, women know what he did, because first offenders, it doesn't go on your record at all. So he just gets to live his happy life. It's not fair. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to people around him. So that's mainly why I did it. So
A lot of people were commenting angry at the charge, aggravated assault. Why wasn't it attempted murder?
well, I think aggravated assault in Georgia is attempted murder. That's what the investigators told me. So I'm not too angry about that. When I first read it, I was for sure angry, but when somebody informed me, that's what it was. But
I guess the fact that whether it's called aggravated assault or attempted murder, like you thought you were going to die, he stabbed you more than one time, 3 times total?
3 times.
And then he serves 2 years in jail. What? This is going to be a seemingly dumb question because I know your answer. What does that make you think when you think about that? I mean, that he ultimately could have taken your life that night, and 2 years went by in jail, and like you said, now he can get a job and go on and potentially this is somebody else.
What does that make me think of?
Yeah, like, how do you feel about that?
Sad and angry, and it's just unjust. I know that like first offenders is like a good thing for people who do minor crimes, but for something like that, I just don't understand why somebody would get it, why somebody would be given first offenders for such a violent crime. But
where do you go from here? What would you like to see happen in your own personal life, and then kind of at large? It sounds like you've kind of taken up this torch, if you will, to kind of, I mean, whether you wanted to or not, you have to, by putting your story out there and being so vulnerable and brave. What would you like to see come of other people hearing your story?
I don't know. I'd like to think that maybe the judge who gave him his sentence might think a little bit longer about what she needs to do next time with such violent crimes. But I don't know. I'd like other women to know that they can stand up and say something, because it's bad either way. Like when my family just knew about everything, I was still in the same amount of pain that I'm in now. It's just now people know, and now something might be done of it, whereas before nothing was going to be done.
For women watching tonight who are in a violent relationship, what's your advice to them?
Run away, get out, go to safe homes, like just leave whatever way you can, because it's just going to get worse if you stay.